Hello and welcome to this next episode of the Ferrariist 10-minute stories. And this is a two-parter. This is about 430s, my favorite topic, as you may or may not know. I'm going to talk to you about my very first 430 and how it's brought me to where I am today. The year was 2013 or 2014, around there, and I got it into my head that I wanted a 430 manual. Okay, I was watching the prices of these things go up and up and up, so I started tracking the market. And at that time, a manual could be found for the same price as an automatic, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but there just were very few around. So when they came, they got snapped up. But the value was pretty close. So in 2013 or 2014, I think it was, I came across one that was kind of it was at a dealership out east. It was a black car. It was a manual. It had some low kilometers. It was a good company. And it was for $140,000. I remember that. And I was very keen to buy it. And unfortunately, I didn't have the funds to buy it for cash. So I thought about different ways that I could move this or that around, or should I lease it? And I was very hesitant. But I still wanted to see it. And unfortunately, the previous owner had decided to paint it matte black. You remember those ugly ass matte paint jobs? And this was before the advent of wraps. These matte paint jobs were incredibly delicate. You left them out in the rain, a bird pooped on them, and the whole thing went to shit. But they were very cool at that time. And this guy had stripped the whole bloody thing down and painted it this matte black. And, I'm not a guy who's going to shy away from, color or weird spec for the right car. But I was just like, matte black is a bridge too far. And at $140,000 that I was really stretching to buy, I had to even make sure that I was going to be able to get the money back. And I hesitated and I didn't buy it. And shortly thereafter, it sold. I don't know who has that car, but I'd love to know if that paint job is still intact, because the rest of the car was stellar. So I had some regrets about that car. I didn't buy it. Okay, so that was 2014. So the next one that came along was a red cab. It had been owned by some old European dude, again, back east. And he had advertised it at $140,000. And this, 6 or 8 months had gone by and the market had sort of kept edging up. And I'm like, okay, well, it's now or never. So I called the guy up and I said, hey, we talked about the car. And I said, look, I'm very interested. Let me send you a deposit. And something in my tone must have alerted this guy that there was a problem. Because he's like, yeah. He just kind of was dragging his feet. Oh, the car's not clean, or this or that, And I said, look, man, I'll send you a deposit today. I'm okay with your 140. I think I offered him 135. And he was like, verbally had essentially agreed, yeah, 135 is okay. But then he just kept dragging his feet. And I was like, dude, what's the deal? And then, he gets back to me a couple of days later. He's, oh, there's not this, the clean, this, that, it's out in my friend's shop and blah, blah. So I said, okay. So then I call him back at the prescribed day. And he's like, oh, you know what? I think that's not enough. I'm like, you asked for 140. He's like, yeah, I need 140. I'm like, fine, I'll give you 140, but I want it. I'm going to give you a deposit today. Let's close the deal. And again, more humming and hawing and, whatever. And another week goes by. And then I get a hold of him on the phone again. And he says, you know what? No, I think it's too cheap. I'm like, dude, you advertised it for 140. It's not like I came up with that number. What do you want for it? He's like, oh, I think I need 150 for it. I was like, okay, you know what? If the car is, as you say it is, clean, this and that, I'm going to give you a deposit. I'm going to fly out there. I'm going to make sure it's okay. I'm going to inspect it. I'm going to buy it. You good with that? Yep, no problem. His name was Joe. Joe said, yep, no problem. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So, and then again, more delaying. And then he's like, oh, I don't know. And then another week goes by and he says, you know what? That old price is gone. Forget about that old price. I said, okay, that's kind of dickish, but what's your new price then? He's like, oh, I don't know. I think it's like 180. I'm like, dude, 180, you went from 140 to 180 in 2 weeks. Yeah, it's going to be like 180. I think it was 170 or 180. I couldn't remember what he was asking. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you 160. Okay, are you good with 160? Okay, 160 is fine. Okay, let's do it. And I said, again, I'll drop your deposit. No, okay, and then more stalling. And then he comes back and says, no, it's got to be 180. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to give you 165 final offer or take a hike. And he's like, yeah. And then again, reneged, like total jackass. in terms of his ability to hold up what he said he was going to do. And so, I think he was a shrewd guy because he knew that something's happening that he couldn't quite put his finger on. But what he was seeing was an overly keen idiot like myself trying to buy the car at every turn, and he'd had a lot of other calls. So clearly he was trying to establish what the value of the car should be, where the offers went from a torrent down to a trickle. Maybe that's when he would close. But I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this guy. He's too much of a headache, and he's obviously not reliable. So if he's not reliable in terms of what he's saying about the car pricing, maybe he's not reliable in terms of the history and so on. So as much as I wanted that car, I had to pass. And I did watch that car sit for about 2 years. And it didn't end up selling. I don't know. I'm sure it sold, but he just probably, I don't know what happened to it. But it would be interesting to know. If anybody knows what happened to Joe's car in Ontario, I'd be very interested to know. It was a red cab manual. Anyhow, maybe in his shoes, I might have done the same thing. So I'm not hating on the guy. I respect the game, but it was annoying to be on the other end. Anyhow, so that car went away. And then probably about 6 or 8 months later, another car comes up. And this one is cherry. It's got 17,000 K, one owner. And, he's a local real estate developer, tons of money, changes his car every 4 years. And, when I ended up talking to him, he's like, yep, every 4 years I change. I skip one V8 model and then I go to the next one. I had a 355. I skipped the 360. Now I've got this 430. And then he skipped the 458 and he was going to buy a 488 and so on. And it was more than I could afford. Again, it was $200,000. But I'm like, man, look at the trajectory of these things. It's going like this. So I couldn't come up with the cash. So against my better judgment, I leased the car because I was fairly sure that the value was in the car, and I leased it. And, being a newbie in terms of leases, I'm sure I didn't get the best deal in terms of leasing, but whatever. So I leased the car for 200 grand and I'm watching the market because, I've got some serious puckering going on. Like, what if it goes like this? So I'm watching, and it's kind of going like this, and then it's starting to level off. And around 6 months after, I'm like, I think it's plateaued. And I just, I was very risk averse at that stage. And I thought, okay, you know what? I didn't know the market, or I didn't have the same feel of the market as I do today. And so I ended up, putting it up for sale. And I went back to the dealer that was local to me, and I said, what can you do? And he's like, yeah, I got a guy, bring it on this date, just don't drive it anymore. And I'm like, well, look, I got to take it on this rally. We're going 300-400K. He's like, okay, 300K, but no more. So I drove it, me and my brother drove it and had the time of our life on this rally. And then I dropped it off on the Monday and he sold it for 250 grand. Now I bought it for 200. I sold it for 250. I walked away with $17,000 after taxes and lease breakage fees and, Ferrari fees and Monday fees and wash fees and this and that. So a lot of beaks got wet on that deal. I can't complain because I came out on top and I had an amazing experience. My brother and I still talk about that rally. It wasn't, craziest driving, but at that time to have 500 horsepower manual convertible car on a sunny day, there's nothing like it. Naturally aspirated, nothing like it. So that car was burned into my brain. I was going to get another one. So I was just waiting for the time to be right. And the reason I bring that story up is because market dynamics, as I've said before, are fluid. You've got to keep an eye on it. And if you're after a car, say it's a 430, say it's a Gallardo, say it's a whatever, and you just say, oh, I got lots of time because there's lots of them on the market. That's okay. But you got to keep an eye on the market because at some point, all that supply starts to dry up. And although the pool can look big, it's a static pool. The same cars will be on sale for many, many years in some cases. So when the market sentiment shifts toward a car like that and they start to get picked off, they're not being replenished. It's like the overfishing scenario. There was a fish in off the coast of Australia. It was a very deep sea fish. It was called the orange roughy. And, they hadn't tried these fishing techniques. So they went after this fish and they found millions of them. And so they just kept bringing them up and they said, hey, this is a new bonanza. So, for a while you get orange roughy everywhere. What they didn't realize was that these fish take forever to breed. So once you deplete that stock, it doesn't replenish. It's the same with these cars. Weird tangent. Sorry about that. I'm a nerd. But when it comes to 430s or any exotic for that matter, no matter how many of them are there on Auto Trader or whatever, it's a finite supply. And if you start to see them disappearing, you need to make your move sometimes, because when they go, they don't come back. So to my point in that respect, the manual cars had already disappeared. I was on the tail end and I just grabbed probably the last one. And shortly thereafter, maybe 3-4 years after, that same car came up for sale again, except now it was 350,000. 4 years later, it had 700 more kilometers. Unfortunately, the car had gotten so expensive that the next owner just, probably was too scared to drive it. That's the sad thing about these things. Eventually, they get too expensive to drive. And if you buy it when it's expensive rather than when it's cheap, it's much harder to justify the kilometers. When I bought the car at the cheap price of 200,000, my smiles per mile quotient is different. The smiles per mile per dollar quotient was different than the next guy who paid 250. And so now it's a 350. The next owner isn't going to be able to drive it in the same way. So while they're cheap, that's when you should buy them. And the 430s are a good buy right now. So have a think. If you're looking at a certain car, just study the dynamic. And if you start to see them disappear, make sure you act, because it might be too late otherwise. Tell me I'm crazy. Like, subscribe. Tell me about your white whale that got away. I'm always interested to hear. Again, I'm just an enthusiast, just like you. Tune in next time, and thanks for joining us this time.